So we're going to get started. First, thank you for joining J&J MedTech in the patient pavilion. So we're here to talk about patients today. And before I turn over to my esteemed panelists here, I want to say a few words. I've been in the medical technology industry for almost 30 years now. And I can tell you that I take, as probably all of you, immense pride in the work we do every day to serve patients. I'm a leader in the space, and I'm also a mother of two boys. And a few years ago, when asked what mom does for a living, they would say, she's not quite a physician, but she's helping physicians. And I love that definition because we realize that each and every day we make an impact for patients. So today we're going to talk about heart rhythm disorders, a very widely prevalent arrhythmia called atrial fibrillation. And I'm joined by our very own J&J employee, Roy Albiani, who's been treated with AFib in LA a few months ago. And of course, our esteemed Dr. Shepul Doshi, who has a very fancy title, but in my eyes, and I've been in the space for 20 plus years, is one of the best electrophysiologists in the world. So his title is Executive Director, Minard Heart and Vascular Institute, Sandra and Vin Scully Heart Rhythm Center, Providence St. John's Health Center, Pacific Heart Institute. A mouthful. So with that, let's get going. And first, I want to say a few words on atrial fibrillation. So you probably know by now that this is the #1 arrhythmia that strikes and touches many patients around the world, about 37.5 million AF patients. And it's an epidemic in the making in that fast forward 2050, there will be 5 million patients more added to the pool each and every year. And there's a solution for AFib that is called AF ablation, but very few patients know about it. And this is why we want to be here today to talk about how much progress we've made in the space over the last 20 years. In fact, J&J MedTech Biosense Webster has made it its goal to cure atrial fibrillation. And in the last 20 years, we're able to take the procedure time down to less than an hour, the clinical success from 60% to now 90%, and no fluoroscopy. And oh, by the way, the patient gets discharged on the same day. So without further ado, I'd like to turn over to the conversation and invite Roy first to speak about his condition and what his life was dealing with an arrhythmia. Roy?
Thank you, Celine, and hello, everybody. And so let me share with you a little bit of my journey with arrhythmia. And I discovered it really by happenstance when I was waiting in an optometrist's office for about an hour and I started getting restless. So I looked at my Apple Watch and I was trying to just play around with the various apps on there, including the electrocardiogram app. And I looked at it and it said I had a heart rate of 156 and my resting heart rate is normally 56. And I said to myself, well, this can't be right. What's going on here? So I did it again and I got the same result, 156. So I got alarmed and so did the Apple Watch. The Apple Watch said, you need to seek medical attention immediately and go to the emergency room. So I said, okay. I called my wife and I casually said, I'm going to be a little bit late for dinner and I'm going to go to the emergency room. And she sort of got a little bit nervous and met me at the emergency room where I was triaged because I had a heart issue and my chest was shaved, electrodes put on. I was given medication, beta blockers, and other drugs. And I was diagnosed with an arrhythmia. And I didn't really understand what that meant. And I got concerned. And I could see it manifest itself over time. And it got progressively worse. And I realized that I'd probably had it for some time, but it was just now that I started to notice it. So for example, when I would go out for a jog or a run, my normal heart rate is somewhere between 120 to 150 beats per minute. I'd go a half a block and it'd be up around 200. And I get really physically exhausted. And I started to worry because I'm a very active person. And I started to think, will I ever be able to run again? Will I be able to ski or backpack again, doing some of the things I really love to do as an active person? But most importantly, I really worried for my family, for my wife to say, what if I had a debilitating stroke or something that could happen that would really disrupt my life? So as time went on, things got progressively worse, and it was hard for me to just do normal day-to-day tasks.
Thank you for sharing. And one thing I want to emphasize is that AFib is actually associated with the stroke risks, 5 times greater risks of stroke when you have AFib. And it's terrible when it comes to quality of life, as we heard from you, Roy. So, Dr. Doshi, can you tell us what is an arrhythmia and why ablation was the right pathway for Roy?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. In the physician world, Abromed is always thought of as a bad word because it was Abromed that we couldn't start getting pens anymore. But it's amazing to see such an environment of collaboration and teamwork, and we realize there's a lot more to it than not getting a pen with a word Viagra on it. But you know, in our world of cardiology, when patients come to us, the only thing they worry about is, am I going to have a heart attack? And they think the world revolves around heart attacks. But in reality, your heart doesn't beat unless there's electricity. It's electricity that makes the heart contract. And so if you imagine when you were born, your mother put 10,000 light bulbs from Costco, and as you get older, some of them start to flicker. And that's what happens with an arrhythmia. You get an electrical short circuit in your heart, of which AFib is the most common. So if you look to your left or look to your right, one of you is going to have atrial fibrillation in your lifetime. And that's how common the incidence is, 1 in 4. If you think about breast cancer, hip fracture, 1 in 6, 1 in 8. AFib is so common. And the biggest issue is, as described, the increased risk of a blood clot and a stroke. And through the technology that we have now today, for example, with what we use for Biosense Webster, we have the technology, like an electrician, to go into the heart, map the short circuits in the heart, find out where those short circuits are coming from, and then cauterize them. And in a way that the patient doesn't have to go to surgery. Many of these patients can be sedated and awake, and they get to go home the same day to a tiny incision in their vein here. So patients never even believe what we did, but it's with this technology, it's with this collaborative approach that we've been able to really fine-tune this procedure in a way that we can have such great outcomes. So I think our biggest challenge is getting the message out and for people to know that we have the capability to fix these things, except when an athlete or a famous person on TV has an arrhythmia, they get it fixed. Suddenly we get a bunch of phone calls and, hey, I have the same thing. So it's really something that's really innovative. And where we started 20 years ago when I started practice and we started doing the first ones of these to where we are now, it's a complete paradigm shift in how we can do this.
Thank you. September was AFib Awareness Month, and it always strikes me that patients don't know that this therapy exists, and they always think that a medication in the pocket is better than an intervention because intervention is scary. So Roy, share with us how you came to that decision yourself and also how life was after the procedure.
Sure, you know, it's interesting. So as things went on, I had about a 3-year window where things got worse. It got progressively more episodes of arrhythmia, and I was taking medication, but it wasn't working. And it was troubling. And I had 2 additional emergency room visits, one of which manifested as a result of a 2-week period of time where my resting heart rate was stuck in 120. It's like your speedometer being stuck and you can't get it out of gear. I felt like I was running a constant marathon versus a normal resting heart rate of around 56. I couldn't sleep. It was exhausting. Had a hard time finding care. And then I found Dr. Doshi, or Shep, who, by the way, is my hero, because he really gave me some wonderful treatment options. But we took a conservative approach first to say, okay, medication doesn't work, so let's try a cardioversion, which is a sort of a shock therapy. And I felt immediate relief. Unfortunately, about a week later, my arrhythmia came back. And so I consulted with Dr. Doshi, and we felt like, well, the best course of action would be this procedure. It works greater than 90% of the time. So I said, let's try it, because I really got to a point where I wanted to get back to living an active lifestyle. So back in August of 22, I had the procedure, and by that winter, I was skiing at Lake Tahoe in Heavenly Valley. So it really changed my life. I was able to do things without concern or worry. And this past summer, I went on a backpacking adventure, carried a 50-pound pack with my guy friends, and hiked up to 12,000 feet, had no residual effects. So the biggest thing is it's given me peace of mind by having this procedure, and I can now live my life without limits. And so that's been a real breakthrough for me.
Life without limits. What a great tagline for AF ablation. You're amazing. Is this a typical outcome, what Roy experienced?
You know, the typical outcome is not that the patient is better conditioned than their doctor, because clearly I don't think I could carry a 50-pound backpack, and I don't think Roy was able to ski. He didn't know even how to ski. Somehow the ablation just gave him the skill set to learn how to ski. But, you know, the important thing about AF treatment is improvement in quality of life. Obviously, everyone thinks about, yes, I want to have less risk of stroke, and that's all great. But what people suffer through on a day-to-day basis of having their heart out of rhythm, it's difficult to explain unless you've had it happen to you. And I can tell you, in the 20-some years I've been in practice, I look young. I've been in practice 20 years. But there are no more grateful patients in your practice than those patients who have been struggling with arrhythmia, who eventually actually forget they even had an arrhythmia, where they're able to live their life. Because in the beginning, they're still thinking, is it going to happen? Is it going to come at the most inopportune time? And then it's just gone for so long that they even stop thinking about it. So this is a result that not only we want to have, this is what we expect now. With the current technology, this is not a 1 in a million, we're so surprised you had such a great outcome. This should be the majority of our patients after one procedure. And so much of it depends on having the right technology, having the right, again, I can't say it enough, collaboration, partnership, where we're all on the same team. We're not enemies. We're not working against each other. I'm not trying to steal your pen unless it says Viagra on it. I've never got that pen. But at the end of the day, you know, it's programs like this and patient awareness. And I can tell you, to have a patient like Roy, who was self-motivated to look into the disease process, I can't tell you how many people come to me after for their third opinion, and their first question is, am I going to have a heart attack? And I said, well, what did the first two cardiologists tell you? Or, I mean, AFib is an electrical problem of the heart. It's not a plumbing problem. And so this is a prime example of how everything, when it works right, how well it works. And the reality is, this is what's happening for most of our patients, this outcome.
The point you just made is incredibly important, because there's always a perception that you can't get it done later, or that there will be something bad happening during the case. So, Roy, if you reflect on your journey, and obviously you work at J&J, you have access to clinicians, to industry, what did you wish patients knew more about AFib and arrhythmias in general?
Thank you, Celine. So a couple of thoughts. You know, the first thing is that I learned is listen to your body and don't be arrogant. So by that, I mean, I felt like I was in relatively good shape. I was fairly young. And I said, well, this can't be happening to me. So the leading cause of death for men happens to be stubbornness. So don't be stubborn. Really pay attention to what your body is telling you. And in my case, I felt like I had an irregular heartbeat probably years before I actually got diagnosed. The second thing I would say is be an advocate for your own health. Be relentless, because when you seek treatment, you will run across the inevitable barriers, including access to care. Even though I work for Johnson & Johnson, it's difficult to see a specialist, especially someone who's proficient in electrophysiology. In my case, I needed to seek treatment through not just a regular cardiologist, but through an electrophysiologist and Dr. Doshi. So those are two key points. And the other piece too is monitor your heart rate. So I'm a big advocate. I don't know if Apple's in the audience, but I need a new watch if anybody's listening. And you know, pay attention to your body and seek treatment and learn what arrhythmia is and what the risks are, and be relentless in getting treatment. And then you can live a life without limits. And I checked my watch, by the way, and when the last time I had an arrhythmia was July of 22. That was the month before my procedure, and I haven't had one since. So again, this gentleman here is my hero.
Roy, thank you so much for making time to be with us today. You truly are an inspiration on many, many levels. You're the reason why we do what we do every day. And Dr. Doshi, thank you for being with us. You're a hero, and you essentially make a difference in the life of patients each and every day. And to all of you, I want you to know, if you experience AFib, do not wait. AFib begets AFib, and the more you wait, the worse it's going to get. So please, please, please take care of yourselves, take care of your hearts. Thank you.
Thank you.